Welcome. This is Alfred Lambremont Webre, and I'm on assignment in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where today it's May 15th, 2012, and I have the great pleasure and honor to speak to independent scientist Leuren Moret, who's speaking from Berkeley, California, where today it's May 14th, 2012. Welcome, Leuren.
Thank you, Alfred. Are you having fun in Malaysia?
Yes. It's been quite a successful trip here. Now,
that's great.
We have not had an update on the Fukushima March 11, 2011 false flag HAARP earthquake tsunami event and the global radiation impact since last November of 2011. And we should let the listeners and viewers know that it's not for lack of trying. This is actually the 7th time that we've tried for an update, and in each of the last 6 times, you have been hit with crippling electromagnetic frequencies that left you, in one case, very nauseous and vomiting. That happened just about 8 hours ago. Could you talk a bit about that? I just want people to know the type of interference that you've been having in these important updates, video updates.
Yes, we were scheduled to do the interview about 8 hours ago, and I sat down at my computer, and it was 6:30 a.m. in Berkeley, California, and suddenly I started feeling very dizzy and off balance, and I just said, my God, I won't be able to concentrate on this interview. And then all of a sudden, I just had this horrendous urge to need to vomit, and I couldn't stop. So we had to cancel the interview this morning, and similar things have happened the other times as well. So either the computer shuts down, or the internet is interrupted or cut off, or I am targeted with electromagnetic frequencies that disable a person's ability to focus and talk rationally and to present this important information. And it's not any surprise at all that this is happening. It's actually a negative compliment to you, Alfred, for the stellar, outstanding interviews that we've done together. And also to the audience. We have a great audience, and I just want to thank people all over the world who are listening and watching our videos. I mean, truth is the daughter of time. It takes time for people to take in a lot of information from a lot of different sources, and that's really what the internet presents. And then to digest and to process and to distill that information takes a long time. And so over time, over the last year plus a couple months since Fukushima happened, our interviews have just really spread around the world, much to my amazement. But people do want to know the truth, and they want to know some solutions too. So we will be talking about the update, but we'll also be talking about solutions. This is not to frighten people. This is our effort is to inform and empower people. So thank you so much, Alfred.
Yes, I agree that this is very important. Now, the last time that we spoke, you had given a status report and had made an estimate that based on Center for Disease Control data at that point, you estimated that there would be about 100,000 excess deaths for 2011 in the United States alone due to the Fukushima radiation. Now, we're now in May 2012, and there was another source that mentioned a Dr. Mangano, I'm not sure, I'm not familiar, and who stated that there were 20,000 excess deaths in the United States in 2011. Could you revisit the whole issue of excess deaths?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Many scientists are giving different estimates. Mainstream scientists or scientists who are tied into the establishment are being very conservative on what they're reporting and what they're estimating. But I have worked with the top scientists around the world. For instance, the Russian scientists who have been working on Chernobyl and just done absolutely just groundbreaking studies and reports. And there's a very, very good book on Chernobyl by Dr. Alexei Yablakov and Yablakov, Yablakov. And he actually, with some other Russian scientists, translated 500 peer-reviewed, published research papers on the biological and environmental effects of Chernobyl after it occurred. And we are certainly facing something much more serious even than Chernobyl, because at the peak of the atmospheric radiation levels in April and May, the radiation in the atmosphere, estimated by Dr. Chris Busby, who is the British government and the European Parliament low-level radiation expert, he was able to get air filters out of Japan and to measure the radiation on them. And because he knew the size of the engine that each air filter came out of, he could estimate the concentration of the radiation in the atmosphere. And what he discovered, I mean, we've all been really shocked and astounded, but the radiation released just in the first month or two after Fukushima was the equivalent of 300 Chernobyls. That's an estimate, that's conservative, and what we do know is that the releases have continued, and there was large increases at the end of July, and that's continued since then, even larger than what was reported before. And that's due to the molten fuel, which melted in the reactors and dripped down through the floorboard of the reactor buildings and reached about 30 feet down by the end of July and ended up in the water table. So big fissures and cracks started forming in the ground between the reactors, and radioactive steam started coming out of them. And of course, it's transported across the Pacific on air currents at all different altitudes in the air column. And then we've had a lot of rain in California starting in about February, and that would be raining out very efficiently this new kind of nuclear war, which is using natural processes like rain and fog and moisture to rain out and deposit that radiation from Japan into our environment throughout all of North America. And of course, it's gone on to Europe and Central Asia, Southeast Asia. It's all over the Northern Hemisphere. It's completely globally mixed in 1 year. So it's been over a year, and the radiation literally has taken over our planet.
So what you're saying is that using the weather warfare techniques and technologies of the HAARP chemtrail system, they're actually delivering, using the rain as a radiation delivery mechanism, having used the HAARP chemtrail system to create the earthquake, tsunami in the first instance to put the radiation out there. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. And then we have another complication, several, with chemical pollution, which has been introduced. And this is also by British Petroleum, BP. And of course, they are really the ultimate players in carrying out Fukushima as well. We've done many interviews on that with plenty of forensic evidence and names, and actually HAARP sites even identified as to being participants in the Fukushima disaster. So this is just a really horrible situation. It just really is.
Now, just to go through some of the technical updates, there have been updates about so-called Unit 2 and so-called Unit 4. There's a gentleman out there, retired General Albert Stubblebine, who says that there are 336 million curies of cesium-137 in Unit 4, and that if these were released, they would virtually destroy the environment and end all human life. Is that correct, or is that an exaggeration, or is that a correct eventuality? General Stubblebine has a historical career with the CIA. I spoke to a whistleblower who was in a top secret CIA program with General Stubblebine. General Stubblebine has publicly denied he was in that program, so he's lied publicly. And in that program, one of his jobs was essentially to torture children in psychological experiments. So I'm just wondering, is General Stubblebine engaged in some form of exaggerated psyops in your judgment, or is he giving straight facts?
Well, the video doesn't show him in it. There's just a photo, and it's his voice. He's obviously reading from a scripted document. The images that are in the video, one of them really gave a lot away, and that was a graph of the radiation measured in creek water, and it said Strawberry Creek. Well, Strawberry Creek is right here in Berkeley, and it's the UC Berkeley Nuclear Engineering Department that actually made those measurements and reported them. And there are other things in that video, in the script that he's reading, that indicate that came from UC Berkeley, the Department of Energy, the Lawrence Livermore Lab, or the Pentagon, or all three of those entities. But it is inaccurate information. For instance, the maps that he's referring to as showing the radiation contamination across the Pacific, they're actually tsunami maps that show the height of the expected tsunami across the whole entire Pacific. So he doesn't even know what he's talking about. In generally what he's saying is just rehashed information that's been all over the internet anyway. But I think that if you look at his history, his affiliations and associations, he's affiliated with Colonel Alexander, who was at Los Alamos. They're both Army.
That's
Former
Colonel John Alexander, correct?
Yes, and Stubblebine was in military intelligence. He and his wife are involved in parapsychology and neurology, things like that. And I looked very thoroughly at his history and his past, and he's definitely been in Army intelligence. He's lied a lot about where he's been or been sketchy on details. And Alex Jones is really, really pushing him right now and pushing this video. So that's another big question mark about who and what General Stubblebine is really about. But I do know that he and his wife live in Panama, and he's the president, he said in this video, of Nature News, Natural News. This is a natural health news site that Rick Adams, he's a health specialist on the internet. That's his site as well. So he is tied in now into the military and Stubblebine and the CIA. So I think that we have to be very careful listening to different sources and making sure that they're credible and that they're not providing more public terrorism, which remember that all governments are terrorist organizations. And once you're in the military, he's a major general. He worked on, it was all intelligence stuff. So he's definitely in with the military at a very, very high level. And so I would say that he's really a spokesperson for other interests. And he's not a radiation expert. He's not a nuclear biology expert. He doesn't have any background in this at all. And obviously he was reading from a scripted statement. The video clip is about half an hour long. And I just wasn't very impressed with him.
Now, he also referred to relocation schemes, presumably for North American residents or residents of the Northern Hemisphere who would be relocated in the Southern Hemisphere. However, without naming names, I'm familiar with some of those at least one of those relocation schemes where Americans, U.S. citizens who were lured down as part of those relocation schemes were actually defrauded out of a lot of money in fraudulent litigation that was instigated by tainted networks down there using fraudulent local attorneys connected to some of these relocation schemes, some of the developers in these relocation schemes. So this whole video seems to be a kind of a scare scenario to find more victims to go into this relocation scheme.
I believe that you're absolutely right. And General Stubblebine and his wife, Dr. Lebo, are living in Panama. She has a clinic, or they have a clinic. And what they're doing, according to Jeff Rentz, who knows them very well, he told me that they are using the clinic to lure people, Americans, down to Panama for medical treatment in that clinic, sort of miracle cures, and they are stripping them of their pension funds and their savings. And I think that that's definitely what he's doing in Panama. And it's interesting because another Army colonel retired. A mutual friend of ours ended up in Ecuador at Vilcabamba, which is sort of in a beautiful valley with that's supposed to have a very good, healthy environment. And it's drawn a lot of people down there, especially Americans. And this Army colonel extorted money from these Americans, in fact, over $1 million from one couple. And they basically borrowed against their pension fund, and they were stripped of all their property down there. They lost the pension fund, and they arrived back in the United States with one suitcase each. And they sent a whole ship container of furniture and personal belongings, and bought a ranch down there. They just lost everything. And then she started getting targeted with these EMF heart attacks. And she's a young woman, so she had to come back to the United States. And finally, her husband finally reluctantly followed her when he realized that with the crooked lawyers, the crooked courts, the crooked CIA down there, that they just really didn't have a chance of recovering their lost funds. So that was very sad. But I believe this is happening in Central and South American countries, as well as other countries where the laws do not protect or help Americans. And so they're lured by retired military officers, American military officers, to these countries, and then they're stripped of their wealth.
Now, getting away from this particular retired general and getting back into the facts, in your opinion, could you give us an update where things stand as far as radiation? Should we who live in the Northern Hemisphere start thinking about relocation to the Southern Hemisphere? What do you think the impacts will be? What is what are the International War Crimes Racketeering Organization, which is what I call the organization that's implementing this plan, what are they currently doing? It's kind of a mixed question, but could you just give us this overview, this kind of big picture?
Well, then I'm going to answer it in three parts. And the first part will be, it's going to be about the what we are seeing now and what's being reported broadly in the media in terms of the health effects from this cesium, which is damaging people's hearts. And it's not just reported in the human population in the Northern Hemisphere. This is cardiac arrest and heart attacks and all kinds of heart problems in very young people, and it's showing up in athletes. And they would be exercising more, they would be fitter than any other members of the population. And of course, they go out and they run and exercise and swim and do all kinds of things outdoors. So they are taking in much larger volumes of air than normal citizens who spend more time indoors and don't do as much exercise. So they are taking in a lot more cesium and other radionuclides that have been produced by Fukushima and then transported across the ocean to be rained out across North America and then Europe and countries beyond. So the it's just incredible. For the last 2 or 3 months, there's really been a very big increase. In fact, the number of heart attacks and cardiac arrest incidents in athletes has tripled over a year or 2 years ago, prior to Fukushima. So this is very, very unusual. And there was an ultra long distance runner, a man about 50 or 55, who ran in the Copper Canyon races in North America, in northern Mexico. I believe the race was in February, and he went to New Mexico and checked into a hotel about a month ago, and he went off to run in the Gila Wilderness. It's a beautiful, huge natural park and beautiful area in the mountains in New Mexico, and he never came back. They did find him days later with no obvious cause of death, but when they did an autopsy, he died of cardiac arrest. Athletes in running races in Pennsylvania and in Texas, as many as 3 or 4 athletes, maybe 6 in some of them, either died, dropped dead of heart attacks near the finish line, or they had to be taken by ambulance to hospitals because of heart trouble. These are people in their 20s and 30s. These are young people. And then an athlete from Africa who plays on one of the soccer teams or the football teams in England, he is still in the hospital, I believe, with cardiac arrest. And while he was in the hospital, another one of his teammates, I believe he's Italian, announced suddenly at the game, he just found out that morning that he had acute leukemia. So this is happening in India. Athletes are suddenly dropping dead. People in other countries in Europe and Italy are suddenly dropping dead. Not to mention racehorses. And we have horses dying after races in the US and England. And so when you have something happening in the animal population and exactly the same thing is happening in the human population in the same regions, then you can conclude that whatever the cause of the deaths is and the illnesses, it's environmental. And what we know is environmental now is Fukushima.
Right.
And then what I wanted to mention, I started to talk about it and then I got sidetracked. But not only is British Petroleum one of the main partners in the Fukushima disaster through the Tromsø, Norway HARP facility, but also British Petroleum has contaminated the entire Caribbean Gulf region with these horrible chemicals they used after the disaster on the drilling rig and the oil spill. The BP used chemicals that the United States government told them not to use. They were too toxic and poisonous and not very effective. BP used them anyway. And so those chemicals are coming down in hailstones and in rain all up and down the East Coast and the middle part of the United States. And so what we have is the synergistic or the multiplying effects of the chemicals from the BP Gulf disaster and the Fukushima radiation, and these increase the toxicity when they combine by at least 10 times. So the other factor that is contaminating the drinking water with chemicals is BP's extraction and fracking. Fracking is where they pump chemicals and liquids into the ground for gas and oil exploration, mostly natural gas exploration. And you have to really ask, why is British Petroleum, Halliburton doing this? And why do they have an exemption to use these chemicals in underground in fracking that is permanently contaminating our groundwater with horrific, long-lasting chemicals that are not allowed in the U.S. No other entity is allowed to use them. So why was Halliburton given an exemption? And of course, the water in the ground are aquifers. That water is millions of years old. We're not going to replace that with a few good winter storms. That will take a very, very long time to replace, and now it's all contaminated. And what the water companies do is they pump the groundwater up, and they take the surface water that is runoff from the mountains and the snow melt, and they combine those, they blend them to make drinking water. So they're putting the chemicals, contaminated water, groundwater, with the surface water that's all full of Fukushima radiation, and they're just accelerating the genocide.
Right. Now, given that, what is your prognosis for how, you said some solutions. What is your prognosis for how we can navigate through sort of what seems to be this kind of rollout period of the depopulation genocide plan of this international war crimes racketeering organization that seems, by the way, to be centrally involved one family, the Rothschilds?
That's right. It's the Anglo-Dutch monarchies. I call them gangsters in tiaras, and that would be the Dutch Queen and the British Queen and their husbands. Queen Beatrice of the Netherlands married a Nazi prince, Prince Klaus, and he was her handler. Queen Elizabeth married a Nazi prince, Prince Philip. And Prince Philip is actually the chief architect of this global genocide and depopulation. And of course, Queen Elizabeth owns British Petroleum and part of Shell Oil. So they are very, very, very serious players in all of this. The London financiers, including the Rothschilds, and the Wall Street financiers, banking establishment, are also partners in this genocide. So we have, in every country, we have our own politicians and our own, if countries have monarchies, we don't, but other countries do. And certainly the Commonwealth countries are under a monarch. And we just have to face the fact that since World War II, it's the civilian population that has been actually the target of these wars in different countries. And now it's a war against the Northern Hemisphere superpowers. And the reason that this is happening is because these international financiers, who are also involved in water rights and mining and all kinds of enterprises, transportation, that make huge amounts of money and allow them to steal money from governments and extort money from governments, such as through the nuclear power industry. They are pumping China now. They make money on pumping in undeveloped country and selling a lot of raw materials that they get through mining projects. And that's exactly what's happening. They're dumping the Western economies. They're collapsing Europe and the European Union, the Euro. They're collapsing North America, and they're trying to unify Canada, the US, and Mexico into one American Union, and the currency will be the Amero. And I believe, and I'm not the only person to say this and believe this, but I believe that Obama will be in office for a second term in order to carry out this unification of North America. And it's going to be really ugly, and it's going to be really nasty because Mexico does not want it. I don't think most Americans or Canadians want it. So basically, they have to completely cause chaos in our civil society, in our normal way of living in life, and destroy the peace and sense of tranquil security that we've had in the past. And you can see with the Occupy movement that this is the rollout that's happening now. And American police are now under NATO. And what we're seeing in American streets more and more now, standing side by side with police in riot gear, we're seeing military types, whoever they are, in camouflage, full military uniforms with machine guns. And that's never happened in the US before. It's going to be an everyday occurrence before long. It's a military takeover.
And Mexico itself, you know, in my conversations with people down there, has been targeted by what we call Dope Inc., which reaches up to the British monarchy and the 13 families controlling the city of London that have, since the time of King George III, controlled the world drug trade. And they have intentionally started a drug war in Mexico as part of this destabilization. Could you comment on that?
Yes, I've done a number of interviews with Mexican radio, and they've been reporting to me regularly about frequent earthquakes. They know they're not natural. They even told me they believed that they were HARP earthquakes. They're not normal, and these earthquakes are sort of swarms of earthquakes in certain areas. And one of them is the center, the heart of the drug trafficking in Mexico. So it seems that drugs and oil and gas are the global currency. And I know that diamonds and gold are the actual currency for doping, for the global drug racket. And the global drug racket is an economy that's 5 times larger, completely hidden in offshore banks and so forth. It's 5 times larger than the normal economy, the legitimate economy that we're familiar with. That's not the only economy. The drug economy is much larger, and I've been to Malaysia, I've been to Sri Lanka, I've been to Thailand, I've been to Burma or Myanmar, and it's those Himalayan foothill countries are ideal for growing opium poppies. And the Vietnam War, the Afghan War, those have always absolutely been about securing new supplies of opium to manufacture heroin. Now, the world capital is in Hong Kong, Jardine and Matheson, and it's very interesting that David Cameron started out his career at Jardine and Matheson headquarters in Hong Kong, as well as Princess Anne's son is being trained there right now at Jardine and Matheson. So if you're British and you're in a power position, you're in dope ink, whether you know it or not, or whether you want to be or not. And believe me, they want to be, because it's a lot of money.
Let me bring the conversation back to Fukushima and the radiation threat. Could you give us your estimate of the situation? And that is, do you think that we'll have a breakdown in reactors 2 and 4 at Fukushima? Do you think the radiation will get worse with them spreading the radiation worldwide and into the oceans? And it will be even more of a threat to humanity and the ecology? What steps do you think we individual humans have to take on a daily basis to protect ourselves? What are the excess deaths that are occurring now? Could you give us a detailed estimate, as far as you can, of the situation?
Yes. The proper steps were not taken as advised by other governments right after Fukushima happened. And I know that the Russian government, the US government, the French government, and other governments, the British also, I believe, actually sent teams to Fukushima, to Japan, to assist and advise the Japanese government and TEPCO. And they absolutely overlooked, rejected all of that advice. And even the president of TEPCO said, well, we were advised, but we weren't going to do any of that because we wanted to save the money of the stockholders. And so in reality, what they did is they nuked the stockholders, because they nuked everyone in Japan and everyone in North America, and it's going to be everyone in the Northern Hemisphere eventually, and the Southern Hemisphere. So that was completely faulty logic and terrible corporate decision making. But we can expect this to continue. Now, it's very obvious that no, our governments and our leaders are not going to help us. They've lied to us the whole time. They've covered it up. They've delayed and denied. And that's the usual response to a disaster on this scale. Nothing like this has ever happened in world history before, and it's threatening all life on Earth. Probably not everyone and everything, every living thing is going to die, but there's certainly going to be a very major die-off. But if we look around us, we don't see people dying or dead in the streets, or dead babies next door or around us, but that's happening all around us, because what they've done is to not dilute the radiation. The amount of radiation that was released is out there. It's still out there. It's not diminished. It's all there in our environment, in the air, in the drinking water, in the food, in the ocean currents. It's being transported in many, many, many directions by many different processes. And so we as citizens of this planet, as a global community, we have to take the steps to stop this. And what has happened in Japan, for the first time in Japan's long history of many thousands of years, the people of Japan have been demonstrating and demonstrating and demonstrating like they've never done before. They were always meek and just accepted things and were just quiet. But they're not doing that now. Mothers and fathers and grandparents and even disgruntled politicians are speaking out and demonstrating and organizing. And as a result, Alfred, the last reactor in Japan was turned off either last week or it's being turned off this week. That's on Hokkaido, the northern island. And I don't believe that any nuclear reactors will ever be turned on again in Japan. I don't think the people will allow it. So you see, when we find our spiritual strength and our spiritual power to reach out and to object and to speak out and to inform our neighbors and to inform each other and to share information and collect information that the government won't collect on the health effects that are happening to our children, our neighbors, our families, then that begins to empower people. That begins to turn things around, and that begins to impact this totally illegal genocidal industry. And there should be no nuclear technologies on this planet at all, because they have all been misused, they have all been misapplied, and it's very, very obvious that the main purpose for developing nuclear technologies and using them has been to exterminate portions of the human race. It's irrefutable. It's so obvious now. Now, people should certainly make themselves aware. And there is a lot of information on the internet. There's very little information in the mainstream media, and especially in the US and Japan. But the Japanese have their own way of, they have their own social network, and they're very, very, very fierce networkers because they've been subjected to a repressive government, a repressive dominating imperial family and the whole establishment that goes with that. I mean, even the poor emperor and his children and family are prisoners of this government and this tradition in Japan. But this disaster is going to change all of that. I know that the Emperor of Japan and the Empress were flown by helicopter through all that fresh Fukushima radiation on at least 2 occasions up to northern Japan, exposing them to very, very, very high levels of radiation exposure. And when I saw that happening last spring and summer, I just said, oh my God, they're going to get sick. The emperor's going to have a heart attack or get sick from this. And then the crown prince and his wife and little daughter were sent to vacation last summer in northern Japan in the most contaminated area. So, but in November, the emperor and the only child of the crown prince and princess ended up in a hospital in Tokyo, and the emperor had bypass surgery, and the little, I think she's 8 years old, the little crown princess, she had asthma, which is an immune system illness. So what we're going to do is we're going to benefit, the global population is actually going to benefit from this disaster. We're going to learn a lot more about radiation now because we know a lot more. Each time there's another disaster, the nuclear bomb testing period taught us certain things. Of course, that was after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so now, for instance, Dr. Busby is comparing the illnesses and the type of illnesses and the rate of these illnesses in Fallujah, the Fallujah population, to the Hiroshima and Nagasaki illnesses, because they're the same illnesses. And the terrible thing in Fallujah is that they're much worse, which means they had a much higher exposure than the Hiroshima and Nagasaki populations. And they didn't even officially have nuclear bombs dropped on Fallujah, on Iraq. And yet we know from our research, years of research, that the the U.S. has been using 5 kiloton and under nuclear bombs all over Iraq, Lebanon, and Afghanistan. So these are all nuclear wars with the full participation and knowledge of the British, the U.S., and our NATO country partners who have sent troops to these contaminated areas.